Everybody comfortable?
Yeah.
Get your ass up when I'm talking.
Hey, take it easy.
It's showtime. It's showtime. Yeah. Feel the magic and soul of the YBs. Yeah.
Welcome to the show. Take two.
That Davis Show, lucky enough to have LaMond Pope, who covers the White Sox for the Tribune, joining us. Follow him at LaMond Pope. How you doing today, LaMond?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So, listen, we got a lot to get into. One, you know what? Even on a nicer note, before we get into Ricky being let go and who's going to be the manager, this is your second or third season following the Sox. I remember you following ND when we first started talking to you, D and myself.
Yeah, this is my first full season. I joined on the beat in June of 2019, and so this is my first full season. And what a first full season to do, right?
You lucked up. You lucked up. Listen. Was it a little harder though, since you had to deal with the pandemic and you couldn't necessarily be around the team?
Yeah, it was like spring training was great. You know, going on down to Arizona and really getting the chance to talk to all the guys. Got a lot of one-on-ones during that time period. But then after that, yeah, when everything went into lockdown, you know, everything all through Zoom, you really don't get the chance to know the guys as well as you would, you know, during last year when I had the chance to be in the clubhouse and talk to some of the guys and chat with some of them back then. And so that did present some challenges from that standpoint. And so looking forward to hopefully one day getting a full season doing it the right way.
But listen, lucky enough, you are there at the right time. And it was funny. I know from some of the times when me and myself was at the Score before they had like a podcast down there, it was like somebody better start following this team because they're going to take off sooner or later. So you're about to hit the stride, young man.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, this season, the fact that they were able to do what they were able to do with all the young talent that they had, I mean, it was a lot of fun to follow, even under the unique circumstances.
True. So let's get into it. During the season, at any point, did you believe that Rick Renteria was going to be let go? I know you have the article talking about the 4 costly games. Now, was it necessarily those games you started to notice, or did this season you think that Ricky would be fine and the Sox would keep the status quo?
Yeah, I mean, those final 4 games, or those 4 games that I highlighted in today's Tribune, and they sort of were like a little bit of a microcosm of what went wrong for the team down the stretch, right? I mean, they had such a strong run, you know, particularly getting in first place. They had a 3-game lead when they clinched their playoff spot for the first time since 2008 when they beat the Twins 4-3 that day. So 3-game lead over the Twins for first place in the AL Central that day, and then everything went wrong, right? They closed the regular season losing 8 of the last 10. Some of them were blowout losses, like one of the losses to the Cubs, 10-0. But some of them were really tight, down to the wire, really, and it came down to one decision here or there. Nothing really particularly with Ricky per se, and Rick Hahn said on Monday that it wasn't one particular game, it wasn't one particular week that led to the change, but those games, particularly that series in Cleveland, where there's just some really crucial games and some really crucial decisions. I remember particularly that the loss in I guess it was the Thursday game. You know, they took the lead in the 7th inning, and then in the bottom of the 7th inning, they go to Jimmy Cordero starts the inning off, allows 3 singles, so they load the bases. They stick with Jimmy. He gets the next 2 guys out, and then and the funny thing was we talked to Aaron Bummer. Bummer and Carlos Rodon both came off the injured list that particular day. So this is the first day that they're both eligible to pitch. And in that situation, obviously, Bummer is one of the, not only one of the top relievers for the Sox, but one of the top relievers in the American League. And so you think in that situation, you're going to go to Bummer to kind of close on it out. But, you show the camera and you see in the bullpen that it's Rodon, and you're like, wait. And then it's like, okay. Well, maybe it's for next inning, right?
Yeah.
No, they're bringing him in. They're bringing him in for that particular situation. It's just an impossible situation for someone like Rodon who hadn't pitched for a long stretch anyway, but particularly had been a starter, hadn't pitched in relief since 2015. So this was his first relief appearance since 2015, coming on in with the bases loaded and 2 outs in that situation. Gives up a 2-run single just out of the hit, just out of the reach of Yolmer Sanchez's glove, and then gives up the double there, and the Indians pull ahead and they win that game, and then they end up sweeping that series. And so that was one of those games in which it's like, And then afterward, when we had the chance to talk to Ricky after the game, he mentioned that was particularly part of the game plan. It was like they wanted to see what Rodon can do in that sort of situation. And it's like, no, in this particular time is not the time to test things out. You got to win games. And that was one of those situations where, he got a lot of, it wasn't a second guess. It was a first guess, right? Everyone knew in that situation, you got to go to the guy that's got the experience to close the game on out.
Correct.
So that was one of those games that really kind of summed up how that stretch went. Obviously coming off the two previous days when they lose on back-to-back walk-off home runs, you really need to get that game there. And they had that game they had the game in their grasp and they let that one slip away. And so it was just, that stretch, those 4 games in Cleveland, really were the difference between them being a possible 2 or possible 3 seed in the playoffs and them instead slipping all the way down to 7 and having gone out to Oakland for the playoffs.
Now, LaMond, when you bring that up, and that was a terrible game, even the part where you got to Jimmy Cordero, because I remember how shaky he was, but he finally got out of it. But when he brought in Carlos, and my first thought was, okay, they activated Carlos and Aaron Bummer, so they probably wanted them to use him. As you said, that was the game plan. And now when you're saying it's the game plan, we would think that it's baseball operations and Ricky's, but perhaps the baseball operations not want Rodon in at that leverage situation. They wanted him in relief because he hadn't been pitching, or was that just Ricky deciding that? How do you parse that situation? Because that seems to fall on front office also for thinking Rodon can necessarily do that. As you mentioned, he hadn't pitched in relief in so long.
Yeah, he was going to be used in relief, during the stretch run and into the playoffs. That was going to be the plan for Carlos going into for the rest of the season. But I think in that situation, it was like they almost felt that they can almost have the chance to sort of steal an opportunity to test Carlos out. And so, Ricky said after the game that Bummer wasn't going to be able to go, finish up the 7th and then come back on out for the 8th. They wanted to be able to use Aaron for the full inning, and so his strategy was going to be, we're going to use Carlos here. We can use him, test him out, see how things work here in the 7th, get that last out, and then have Bummer for the 8th inning. But it's a situation where you can't plan for one thing. You got to get out first.
Yeah.
The most important, the most critical thing is getting that last out there in the 7th inning, and they weren't able to do it in that sort of situation. And so that was just such a costly loss. And then, obviously, we can talk a lot about Game 3 of the wild card series as well. Just sort of the particularly that 4th inning, right? You're up 3-0. It's really a game in which they had those opportunities, so many more opportunities early in the game to kind of cash on in and to really put Oakland in a big hole. And when you're in the playoffs game, you got to be able to catch them in those situations. But they still had 3-0. Cody Hoyer, who had been so good throughout the entire season, gives up the 2-run homer to Murphy. And then once again, they bring in Rodon.
I wanted us to be happy in this interview.
There's a lot to be happy about for the White Sox game, but just this last stretch was just kind of rough. Kind of a rough inning for the team, right? Obviously, he allows the first two guys get on the walk and a double, so they got 2nd and 3rd, and then obviously with the new. With the new rule this season where you have to face 3 batters minimum, Ricky didn't want. Ricky thought it was a better matchup to have Matt Foster in against in that situation, and so they walked the guy, and then they brought in Matt, and then Matt walks the next 2 guys, and just like that, a 3-0 lead becomes a 4-3 deficit. And Matt had been so good throughout the entire season as well. Obviously one of his outings there in Cleveland was kind of I think it was the Tuesday game, so they were leading, or they took the lead in extra innings in the 10th inning. They got 2 runs there in the top of the 10th. And then Alex Colome, he pitched a perfect 9th. He was supposed to come back on out for the 10th, but just some bad luck. His back started acting on up, so they had to go. So they went to Matt, and Matt got the first 2 out. And then he gave a double, and then he walked the next guy, and you kind of tell that was sort of a situation where it's like, this is a really, really tense moment. And then they obviously brought in Ruiz, and he gave up the 3-run homer there to Ramirez to walk that game off as well. And so just some of those, they're in all these games. Really, it's just one pitch here, one decision there, and we might be talking about a team that's still competing right now and playing right now in the ALCS.
It would have been very nice if that was going to take. Definitely appreciate it. That David show, we have LaMond Pope, who covers the White Sox for the Tribune. Follow him at LaMond Pope. Listen, is there much truth to the facts that there was some kind of pushback between Rick Renteria and Don Cooper when it came to metrics and data from baseball operations, or is this just something that's coming up because they're gone? And of course, guys that are looked at as being kind of old school, we won't say there's necessarily pushback, but they use analytics and data, but they still kind of go with how they feel the game used to go in the past too also.
Oh yeah, I'm sure those reports are accurate. I mean, Daryl's a really great reporter, and so yeah, I definitely believe that might be the case as well. But it's a situation, as you said as well. I mean, obviously they do use it to some extent. There's some little bit here, a little bit there in a situation as well. And everyone's always trying to look for answers as far as that's concerned. As far as why are you going to make that kind of decision? Because like you said, I mean, it was a situation where I think it's more of a situation where they really do believe that this is a team that's capable of taking that next step. There's a couple of guys that might be available that have a ton of postseason experience and a ton of postseason success, and they figure, what, if we're going to do this is now the opportunity to get one of these guys before before they're gone, and then they have to kind of scramble if they have to go and wait the next season. And so I think it was more like, what, this is an opportunity, we're going to kind of really going to go for it right now, and so now let's go ahead and make this change and see if the Sox can take that next step.
Look, sticking with that, I want to talk a little bit about Don Cooper and the fact that, like you just said, they looked at them having a window and that there's a lot of candidates out there that are valuable, and why not get in one, not miss out on the chance. Do you think if they would have stuck with Ricky, they would have probably kept Don, even though some people said that he checked out? Yeah, I figured. But my main question was the problem with keeping him moving forward, any top flight manager will want to bring in perhaps his own pitching coach, or the relationship in the past that like Joe Cowley reported on, as far as with Kenny Williams in the front office, Don Cooper, and having like a direct line into the clubhouse, and managers necessarily don't want you to have that type of access or feel comfortable with front office having that type of access. Yeah,
I think that they feel that this is an opportunity, again, just sort of have that clean break. I mean, one of the things that Rick Hahn mentioned was like, this is going to be an opportunity for them. They're going outside of the organization, which is something that they haven't done in an awful long time, right?
Correct.
And so I think from that standpoint, to completely get that fresh spin on things, fresh look at things, it's a situation where, I mean, Cooper's been there for such a long time. Mm-hmm. Now it's an opportunity for them to kind of say, all right, how can we best approach this thing moving forward from a complete standpoint, from a total on the field standpoint. And so I think that was part of the thought process with that as well.
Look, with the Tony La Russa interview, how far are the Sox going down this rabbit hole? Terrific manager, but that's some throwback. That's
yeah, that is like the definition of old school. I think it's I would be surprised, to say the least, if that ended up being the case. Like I said, I mean, Hall of Famer, 3-time World Series championship manager, but he hasn't managed since 2011. Yeah. I just think that it's a situation where, one of the things that Rick was talking about, just getting an opportunity to talk to different guys, to pick their brain, see what they see in the White Sox as well, and maybe be able to kind of say, oh, okay, see, we didn't think about that from that standpoint. We didn't think about this from that standpoint. Mm-hmm. And when you have the chance to talk to someone like a Tony La Russa, you take it. But I don't think it's going to get to the point where he's going to be the next guy that's going to be guiding.
I hope not, because it would seem like a somewhat awkward relationship, and I'm sure that it wouldn't initially be, but between La Russa and Hahn, because La Russa has a direct connection with the owner and friendship, and usually you want to go through the general manager to get to the owner instead of you being able to work your way around. So it would look like to me that perhaps Hahn wouldn't have the control that we thought he had, but then it kind of reminds me of the situation where Kenny, quote unquote, hired Ozzie, but of course we know Jerry probably did want Ozzie to probably be the manager at that point. So it just, to me, it's when everything's moving in a direction, it's like, yeah, we're up to date, we're current, we're not doing throwback stuff anymore. And then it's like Tony La Russa, and it's like, Yeah, that would have been cool 15 years ago. But I just wonder about Rick Hahn in that situation and how he would look at it as far as being, I won't say pressured, but somewhat probably being told that your owner has a desire to have this guy in rather than someone you would prefer to move forward with in the working relationship.
It's given us something to talk about. It's given us something to write about. You know, it's kept me busy.
Right. Good point. Great point.
Yeah, but yeah, I would be surprised if that ended up being the case. I think, like you said, it's an opportunity to get a chance to get someone like AJ Hinch or get someone like Alex Cora, you know, who can kind of fit more of that profile of what Rick Hahn talked about, what they were looking for. They wanted someone with recent championship experience, and those two guys both fit that bill.
Yeah. That David show right here, we have LaMond Pope. LaMond, look, AJ Hinch, you just mentioned him, right? I've opined for him since he got fired last year. I knew we had to wait a year, but I was like, oh, and it was funny because you saw the reaction in the media to the scandal. And I don't necessarily think it'll be a huge PR problem, but do you believe it'll be a PR problem? And perhaps that's where they're doing the end around with La Russa before fixating on someone who some fans and some reporters, there's going to be some blowback because he broke sacred rules in baseball. This is worse, quote unquote, than steroids. I believe it's under Pete Rose. All right. I don't think it's past Pete Rose, but still, do you think there'll be an issue bringing him into the fold with White Sox Nation basically? Or it's like, no, we want that guy because we know he's such a winner.
Well, according to a few of my emails, yes, that'll be a little bit of an issue. And I'm sure, you know, and rightfully so. I mean, it's going to be some questions. He's going to have to answer some questions, you know, just like how Dallas had to answer some questions
right.
when he first arrived. You know, there were some fans that were talking about, oh man, you know, how can you add someone like Dallas Keuchel to the mix there? You know, part of that 2017 Astro team, cheaters. And it's like, but once he started pitching well, once he became that team leader, once he did that team speech, everyone was like, yeah, we got our back, right? You know,
we're good.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be one of those type of situations. Well, if it's either with AJ or with Alex, I think it's a situation where, you know, they're going to have to answer the questions. They're going to have to answer the questions once, twice, 3 times, 4 times.
Right.
And really show that, you know, I actually did something that today, like sort of like just kind of diving on in to AJ, and one of the things that, you know, the commissioner mentioned was like, you know, he didn't participate in it. He didn't set it up.
But he was negligent.
But the fact that he knew about it and he didn't stop it, and that's one thing I read. You know, he had an interview with Tom Verducci, you know, in February after it happened as well, and he was, you know, he was very remorseful. He said, you know, there's some things I should have done. Yeah, there's some things that you should have done, and those are going to be the things that he's going to have to answer for. You know, if it's here or if it's Detroit, you know, or wherever his next job is going to be, it's going to be a topic that he's going to have to come on over and to get on over, and it'll be something that, you know, he's going to have to answer for as well.
Listen, I know he cheated, LaMond, but don't send him to Detroit. I mean, that's just unfair. But I want to keep it on different destinations. And this is something executive producer Ryan brought up on Tuesday's show. Should the White Sox organization and fans be worried about if the Los Angeles Dodgers get knocked out of the playoffs? Because we know that Dave Roberts is basically hanging on by a thread. Mm-hmm. Listen, that's a better team as far as the money that'll be spent and a better market. I'm in Chicago and I'm just stating facts. So is there a fear of, Lord, one, you have to wait till the World Series is even over to get AJ Hinch. It'll be great if you can sign him now while the Dodgers are still playing. But do you think that there's a chance that if the Dodgers get knocked out, that AJ Hinch may take that job? I guess is the question I'm asking.
I mean, you always have to. That's a great point. Yeah, that's always something you have to keep in your back of your mind, and that's why you always got to keep working. You know, to try to lock these things on up as quickly as possible. But I think that the Sox recognize or realize that they wouldn't have gone down this path if they didn't think that they had a really good chance at getting one of those two guys. And so I think they have a plan, and I think that they'll be able to execute that plan on out. But yeah, I mean, you know, the Dodgers, you know, if they lose tonight, you know, go down 3-1, and then, you know, a little more pressure is going to be on them to kind of, they have to at least get to the World Series. I think for
I agree.
to feel safe. And so So that's going to be something that, everybody's going to be watching moving on forward, just to see how everything kind of works on out, because that would be a huge opening for someone to kind of take on in and take that reins. And obviously, they have the resources to kind of go after the best, and it'll be worth watching to see what kind of direction they go in if they do fall short again this postseason.
That David Show with LaMond Pope. Look, I want to get back into the candidates for the manager, but one thing that just popped out into my head, and you're around the media often, and I'm talking about not just with baseball probably, but people report on multiple sports. What is the thought pattern, and is it just that the Jerry is getting old, Jerry Reinsdorf, the chairman, is getting old? But what's the thought pattern about looking what's happening with the Bulls, with Billy Donovan being able to fire coaches that are signed up? And even when you sit there, and of course it's just 1 year, but Rick Renteria has another year, and we're doing this in a pandemic, and it seems like the purse strings have been opened up. Like, what do people feel is the reason behind this? And is it just mortality, I guess is the question that they're going for? Or is it because the market, fans don't put up with the type of stuff they used to put up with the past necessarily?
Yeah, I mean, it's an aggressive move on both parts, right? Obviously, the Bulls, the lack of success there. But, from the White Sox standpoint, you make the playoffs for the first time since 2008, your first winning season since 2012. You see that, this is building. It's a situation where a change wasn't necessary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Bulls, obviously a different sort of situation with how things were running over there. So it's an aggressive move, but it's a move that you make when you feel that you have the chance to take that next step, and that's what they feel like, and I think they're not messing around. It's something if you're a White Sox fan that you have to be impressed with, and you have to be kind of pleased with it. Now like you said, the situation with it being in a pandemic, where they no fans obviously in the stands, no revenue from that standpoint. So it's going to be just such an odd offseason, not only for the White Sox, but for all of baseball, as far as that's concerned, just to see how much you can add to your roster, or what kind of moves you can make to kind of improve your roster, given what not only what has happened this past season, but some of the uncertainty moving ahead as well. We really don't know what 2021 is going to look like. When will fans be back in the stands? When will, I'm guessing we're going to play a full season, but you just don't know. So there's so much uncertainty right now, and obviously when it comes not only to sports but just anything in general with dealing with any type of business, you want to have that sort of certainty and set. But one of the things that Rick talked about on Monday was that they've sort of set themselves on up financially where they've they're in an okay position from as far as having some of these guys locked on in already. Obviously long term, a lot of these young players. You have a Luis Robert locked on in long term. You have Yohan, Eloy. So you have so much of the roster is already set and in place. It might be just a little bit of a tweaking here and there. Whereas as far as like we got to blow up the whole model of how we're going to approach this offseason. And so, but it's something to keep in mind from how you're building the team, because obviously they want to kind of get better in right field again. They want to get better and designate a hitter again. They want to add a veteran starting pitcher. So those are three key needs that they need that they're going to be looking for in the offseason. And then obviously you throw on top of it a new manager, new pitching coach, maybe some other new coaching, some coaching changes as well. And so you have to kind of keep all that in mind. But it's an aggressive call. But I think it's a call that the team felt was necessary for them to make to kind of take that next step.
Look, I want to get to the managers and free agents, but one thing you just brought up as far as pitching coach, do you think they may go to having more than one pitching coach? Like more of some of these other teams aren't looking just for one guy to be able to unlock all these pitchers in the rotation, but perhaps looking for guys that can do multiple things, and instead of just going with the one pitcher coach role. Maybe one guy have the title, but basically someone else will be on equal status for the most part with the pitching coach.
Yeah, it's just such a unique. Obviously, it's something that the White Sox haven't had to do in a long, long time, right? look for how they want to kind of build. That young core pitching staff, because there's so much young talent that they have in that staff, and so you want to get the most out of it. Lucas and Dane and Dylan and Crochet and
Kopech,
So there's so much talent, young talent there that you want to help develop and take that next level. You see like a Dylan Cease where he has such he has so much talent in that arm, but you have to, he's got to get better as far as that walk rate. He's got, he has to show more control there.
Control.
Even someone like Ronaldo. I mean, he has all the talent in the world, but he's been just so inconsistent these last couple of seasons. When he's locked in, he can be very effective. Even during that stretch run, he had a couple of really nice starts. Obviously, the game against the Twins when they wrapped up the playoffs. Some of us were kind of surprised that he was the guy that got the ball. And he pitched really well. And then obviously in Cleveland, he had his next start. He pitched really well there. But then his last start of the season against the Cubs, not so good, and he was left off the playoff roster. So just sort of having that consistency that he has all the talent in the world, but just making those consistent marks. And so whoever they get in that pitching coach role, he's going to have a whole lot of talent to work with. Now it's just kind of maximizing getting the most out of that group.
Now, getting back to the manager situation, from AJ Hinch to Tony La Russa to Alex Cora, who else do you know, if you do, was on this list? And what are the pros and cons about the guys that I just listed and anybody else that you list?
Yeah, I mean, I think they, obviously with both AJ and Alex, I mean, the biggest con is what we've talked about. It's just sort of getting over the stain of the cheating scandal. And obviously with Alex a little bit more because he was one of the guys that was kind of hands on with that situation. But obviously the pros with both, they were able to, obviously in AJ's case, 3 consecutive 100+ win seasons.
Yeah.
So a whole lot of winning. That's bottom line, right? Obviously, with Houston, 107 wins in 2019, the most in franchise history. With Alex, I think it was 108 wins in 2008, the most in Red Sox history for a single season. And so, not only have they won, but they've won big, and they brought home the title. And so, and obviously the same thing, historically with Tony La Russa, obviously, when you have someone who's 3 championships as a manager, and then helped in the front office for another championship as well. And so the fact that those 3 guys have all have the number one thing that you want is someone who can guide you to a championship, who's done it, who knows what it takes to get the job done. I think those are the key ingredients when you're looking for someone to take that next job. And that's why I think it's really I can list other guys that I think may or may not be possible candidates, but I think it really is going to come on down. If they can get AJ Hinch, you get AJ Hinch.
I hope so. That Davis Show with LaMond Pope. Follow him at LaMond Pope, talking White Sox. He covers them for the Tribune. Listen, you mentioned free agency. We all know that they need a starting pitcher. You can't go into next year trying to rely on these young arms and think you're going to get 200+ innings out of them. We need a left fielder, and we definitely need a left-hand bat. Who are some of the guys that you would prefer to fill in those situations?
Yeah, I mean, starting pitching, let's start there. I mean, obviously everyone's going to be like, Trevor Bauer, right? I'm like, no, probably not Trevor Bauer. Probably, I mean, Trevor's going to be, he's going to get, he's going to be, everybody's going to want Trevor Bauer, and rightfully so. I mean, he had a great season this past season with the Reds. But I think someone like a Marcus Stroman, someone like a Jake Odorizzi, who, I remember last year before he accepted the qualifying offer with the Twins. I thought that he might have been a nice little fit for the White Sox. Walker, he had a nice kind of comeback. He was with Seattle and went to Toronto. Had a nice little season with them. And so one of those 3 guys can really help out, young enough to kind of be there to kind of help grow, but also has that experience and has been in some of those type of situations as well. That's what you want. You want to have someone who who can depend on for 3 or sort of like in a Dallas type, in Dallas Keuchel sort of type of situation where you have someone who has had some success, some rooted success in the past, and you can kind of depend on and lock on in for 3 years or so. Right field, I mean, that's one of those situations. Well, obviously, Nomar Mazara, they traded from this past off season from the Rangers. He was someone who has home run potential, but he just didn't show it with the Sox. He was out at the beginning of the season, he said, because of strep throat, and he just never really gained that power. He had only 1 home run all season long, and so I know that's a situation that they're going to be kind of looking at to see what they can do in right field. Is it someone like a Jock Peterson, who obviously they kind of flirted with in the past in obtaining in one way or the other. He would help on out from the left side of the plate, and so that not only could he give you that that left-handed bat, but help out from that sort of standpoint. And then designated hitter. I mean, I think designated hitter is a situation where you have someone like Andrew Vaughn. You have someone in house who can take that next step. And Andrew Vaughn, I think, is ready. The one thing that's one area where this pandemic did hurt, where he didn't get the at-bats down in a minor league system where he can kind of be like, all right, now we're ready to see what Andrew can do at the major league level. But during spring training and during summer camp, I mean, he was just raking. I mean, every single time he came up to the plate, just hitting everything hard. And so I think that's a situation where you don't really have to go outside to get a DH. You can look inside and you can go with Andrew Vaughn and have him take that next step and be that guy that you can insert on into the lineup.
Look, speaking of in-house, and I know you mentioned it in your article as far as James McCann being gone because he's a top-flight catcher. It's very few catchers that can hit and catch, but he can do that. At least he just started doing it with us last year after leaving Detroit. I know you said that they can go with Zach Collins and stay in-house, but what about looking for another vet to kind of, one, keep the miles off of Yasmani since you have him for 2 more seasons and kind of keep the same thing that you had going this well with having 2 good backstops? It seemed to really benefit the Sox this season.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Yeah, I mean, I think that might be something that they might definitely look on into because it's a situation where, again, James is going to be commanding, high dollars and deservedly so. What he did last year and what he did this season as well. He showed that he deserves to be a guy that can be an almost everyday starting catcher. And so from that standpoint, it might be a situation where you can, there's going to be plenty of other guys. I haven't really looked at the list to completely see who's available, but you might be able to get a serviceable guy that can give Yasmani a day off or two. I mean, Yasmani is someone who does want to catch every single day as well. He did that last season when he was with Milwaukee. He caught a ton of games.
Yes, he did.
So I think it's a situation where you have someone who's going to be willing to catch, but you might want to have someone who has a little more experience because obviously it's a situation where Zach hasn't had a ton of chances to show it, but he really hasn't had that opportunity to. When he has had the opportunity, he hasn't really taken full grasp of that chance. Same with obviously in spring training, guys like Yermin Mercedes. He had a great spring, but again, you want to have someone who has that sort of veteran presence as well, and I can definitely see that being the case with them kind of looking to see where they can get a little bit cheaper, because McCann's going to cost an awful lot.
Look, besides filling holes through free agency, looking at the team that's on the field, what, if any, are the concerns that you may have for these players next season?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a lot of it's just sort of taking that next step. I mean, when we talked a little bit about the pitching staff, obviously you want to get number 3 guy because obviously, as you saw in Game 3 of the playoffs, not having that established third starter came back to hurt them a little bit. But but for the rest of the guys, it's taking that next step. It's for Dylan, it's finding that consistency in the strike zone. For Dane, it's being that guy that was more like his first 5 starts or so, and not those last couple starts of the season. With Ronaldo, it's just finding that consistency, start in and start out. And then it's just kind of watching these guys kind of grow and take that next step as well. Obviously, like you take a look at Eloy, he had a great rookie year, and then he got even better his second season. So that's what you want to see from Luis, right? He had just lights out July and August. Just was was one of the most exciting players in all of baseball to watch. And then when he struggled in September, kind of got in between a little bit with his swing, it was a major scuffle. And so it's just kind of being able to bounce on back. What he learned from September. He had a nice final stretch in the playoffs there. He had a really good game. Obviously, provided most of the offense there in Game 3. So star potential with Luis Robert, but it's just taking that next step. You want to see that out of him. You want to see Nick Madrigal kind of grow as well. Just continue. Obviously, he'll hit a pitch up here. He'll hit pitch down there. Mm-hmm. But it's also kind of getting better on some of those base running mistakes that he made. Some of those a couple of the fielding mistakes that he made. Just kind of growing from that, learning from those opportunities, and getting better from that standpoint. And then guys like Jose and Tim, you just want them to just keep on doing what they're doing. And then Yohan obviously just kind of obviously
get back to himself.
It was such an odd year. Kind of it's tough to even evaluate Yohan's year because obviously when he's on, he's one of the top players not only obviously with the White Sox but in all of the American League, and the fact that COVID really took an impact and really hit him hard. And so, you just want him to rest on up and come on back and be the Yohan Moncada that the White Sox know that he can be.
Or this one, I want yes to know, and then I'll have one last one. You mentioned that Lewis Robert could be a star. Can he be a star? Can he be a superstar?
Super duper star. He can be
Okay,
one.
just
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's how I feel. And then last one, definitely appreciate you for joining us. Look, how have you been moving through this COVID situation? How have you been entertaining yourself? What are some of the hindrances how's it been different for you being in this type of situation and also getting your job done? I know we kind of opened up talking about that.
Yeah, no, it's been a unique season for sure. I mean, I went out to Oakland for the wild card series, and that was my first flight since spring training, coming back from
Ziploc bag. How'd you do?
So that was just it was just such a unique and different season from that standpoint. Obviously I'm so used to kind of going to all the games, particularly all the road trips, and making most of the road trips from that standpoint. And this year, we got the chance to go up to Detroit, got the chance to go over to Cleveland, but I missed on, because of the restrictions. If I would have gone to Kansas City, then I would have had to quarantine for 2 weeks because we can't, because Missouri was on the list.
Yeah.
Same thing. Same thing when the White Sox went up to Milwaukee. We were told, if you can't come back, you can't do it. And so just you have to kind of pick and choose from that standpoint. I watched a whole lot of, not only watching a lot of games at home, but keeping score at home for the first time in a long, long time. And so, but it was a situation where, in one way or the other, of the 63 games that the Sox played, I covered 61 of them, and so they kept me busy.
Good.
It was fun. It was fun season for sure from that standpoint.
LaMond, listen, keep up the great work, and we definitely look forward to talking to you down the line. And stay safe out here, man.
You too. Thank you very much. Anytime.
No doubt. LaMond Pope from the Tribune joining us, and we always appreciate it.